Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey to ancient Egypt. Not to marvel at the pyramids or ponder the pharaohs, but to explore something far less glamorous, yet incredibly impactful: the horrifying diseases that plagued its people. Imagine yourself there, living along the fertile banks of the Nile, the warm sun beating down, the scent of the river mingling with the dust and the aroma of baking bread. You might be a farmer toiling in the fields, a craftsman in a bustling city, or even a noble in a grand estate. But no matter your status, you're constantly exposed to a hidden world of microscopic enemies. You're splashing in the river, unknowingly inviting parasites into your body. You're eating coarse bread, silently grinding down your teeth. Honestly, surviving to a ripe old age in ancient Egypt was less about luck and more about avoiding a truly dreadful list of afflictions. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're living in a land shaped by the mighty Nile. Every year, its annual inundation brings life-giving silt to the fields, making the land incredibly fertile. But this blessing also comes with a significant health cost. As the floodwaters recede, they leave behind stagnant pools, marshy areas, and a perfect breeding ground for all sorts of vectors: mosquitoes, flies, and snails. You, going about your daily life, are constantly interacting with this environment. You're drawing water from the river, washing clothes in its currents, and tilling the damp earth. This intimate connection with the Nile, while essential for survival, meant you were constantly exposing yourself to unseen threats. Consider the pervasive presence of waterborne diseases. A common historical truth is that living near large bodies of water, especially those with fluctuating levels, dramatically increases the risk of parasitic infections. You're drinking from the Nile, perhaps without knowing about the tiny, insidious creatures that might be lurking within its murky depths. You might feel a slight itch or discomfort after wading in a shallow pool, dismissing it as nothing, but unknowingly, you could be picking up something that will plague you for years, slowly draining your vitality. One of the most horrifying, yet common, diseases of ancient Egypt was schistosomiasis, also known as bilharzia. A lesser-known detail about this parasite is its life cycle. Tiny larvae emerge from snails in fresh water, penetrate your skin when you're wading or washing, and then mature into worms that live in your blood vessels. Imagine wading through the cool Nile water after a long day in the sun, feeling refreshed, completely unaware that microscopic invaders are tunneling into your flesh. These worms would lay eggs, which could become trapped in organs like your bladder, liver, and intestines, causing chronic inflammation, pain, and eventually organ damage. You might experience blood in your urine, abdominal pain, or a general feeling of weakness, but without understanding the true cause. It's a slow, insidious process that wouldn't necessarily kill you quickly, but would make your life miserable and shorten it significantly. Historians still debate the exact prevalence and severity of schistosomiasis across different periods of ancient Egyptian history. Was it equally widespread among all social classes? Or did the elite, with their perhaps cleaner water sources and less direct contact with agricultural work, suffer less? Did the ancient Egyptians fully understand its connection to water? Or did they attribute its symptoms to other causes or divine displeasure? The mummified remains and skeletal evidence provide clues, but the full picture remains somewhat elusive. You're a farmer, your feet constantly wet in the irrigation ditches, your hands submerged in the muddy soil. The constant exposure to the river's ecosystem makes you particularly vulnerable. You might see your neighbors, your friends, suffering from chronic fatigue, distended bellies, and a general wasting away. This wasn't a sudden, dramatic illness. It was a slow erosion of health, making hard labor even harder. The productivity of entire communities could be subtly undermined by the widespread presence of this disease. Beyond parasites, the very environment fostered other illnesses. The arid climate, while preserving bodies as mummies also meant that dust and sand were omnipresent. You're breathing in fine particles daily, whether you're working in the fields, constructing monuments, or simply walking through a bustling street. This constant inhalation of abrasive dust contributed to a host of respiratory problems. Imagine the gritty feeling in your throat, the persistent cough that never quite goes away, especially in the dry season when the winds whip up sandstorms. Another significant environmental factor was the reliance on open fires for cooking and heating. You're huddled around a small fire in your mud brick home, the smoke filling the enclosed space. Over years, this exposure to smoke and soot would take its toll on your lungs. Common historical evidence from mummified remains shows signs of anthracosis, or black lung, indicating significant inhalation of carbon particles. You might find yourself wheezing, short of breath, struggling with simple tasks that require exertion. This slow suffocation was an unglamorous but very real threat, particularly for women who spent more time indoors near these fires. The diet, while seemingly abundant thanks to the Nile, also had its own pitfalls. Grain-based foods, like bread, formed the staple of the Egyptian diet. However, the methods of grinding grain often left tiny stone particles and grit mixed in with the flour. You're eating your daily bread, sustenance for your hard work, but each bite is subtly grinding down your teeth. This constant abrasion led to severe dental problems, which we'll delve into more deeply later, but it's a fundamental aspect of daily life that contributed to chronic pain and infection. The close living quarters, especially in urban areas, also facilitated the spread of infectious diseases. You're living in densely packed neighborhoods with limited sanitation. Waste disposal was rudimentary, and flies would buzz around indiscriminately, spreading pathogens from refuse to your food. Imagine the smell, the constant presence of insects, the inevitable transmission of bacteria and viruses in such an environment. A simple cold could quickly spread through a household, and more serious infections could decimate entire communities. Even the very act of building monumental structures like the pyramids had health implications. You're working under the scorching sun, enduring immense physical labor, often with limited access to clean water and adequate rest. Accidents were common, leading to fractures, dislocations, and crush injuries. Without modern medical care, a severe injury could easily become infected and lead to a painful, lingering death. You'd witness your fellow laborers suffering from heat stroke, dehydration, and the consequences of falls, a stark reminder of the physical toll of these grand projects. So, as you lay in your simple Egyptian home, perhaps feeling the familiar aches and pains, you'd be living with a constant, low-level dread of these invisible enemies. The refreshing Nile, the dusty air, the warmth of the cooking fire, the very food that sustained you, all these elements of your daily life, while seemingly benign, carried hidden dangers that could slowly, horrifyingly, chip away at your health and ultimately, your life. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? You're navigating the dusty plains and the fertile riverbanks of ancient Egypt, constantly aware of the environmental challenges to your health. But beyond the visible dust and the immediate dangers of the Nile, a far more insidious and widespread threat quietly tormented the ancient Egyptians, the silent scourge of parasites. These microscopic invaders, often unseen and unheeded, silently waged war within the bodies of rich and poor alike, slowly draining vitality and causing chronic suffering. Imagine waking up feeling perpetually tired, your muscles aching, your belly distended, and a general malaise hanging over you like the desert heat. You attribute it to hard work, to the will of the gods, or perhaps to a poor harvest. But the truth is, a tiny, multi-celled enemy has taken up residence inside you, feasting on your nutrients, multiplying within your organs, and slowly eroding your strength. This wasn't a sudden, dramatic illness. It was a slow, debilitating siege, a constant drain on your energy and health. A common historical truth is that ancient civilizations, particularly those reliant on complex irrigation systems, were breeding grounds for parasitic infections. The close proximity of humans, livestock, and water sources, often with rudimentary sanitation, created ideal conditions for these organisms to thrive and spread. You're walking barefoot in the fields. Your skin absorbent and vulnerable. You're eating food that might have been contaminated by flies, or drinking water from a communal source. Every aspect of your daily life unknowingly exposed you to these pervasive threats. We touched upon schistosomiasis in the last chapter, but let's dive deeper into its silent horror. This disease, caused by blood flukes, was undeniably rampant. A lesser-known detail is that the eggs of these parasites have been found in the mummified remains of both commoners and pharaohs, suggesting its widespread presence across all social strata. Imagine even the mighty pharaoh, surrounded by luxury and served by the best physicians, still falling victim to these tiny, persistent worms. You might feel a burning sensation when you urinate, or notice blood, a frightening sign that your bladder is under attack. In advanced cases, the liver and spleen would enlarge, leading to a condition known as splenomegaly or hepatosplenomegaly, causing the characteristic potbelly often seen in depictions of ancient Egyptians. This wasn't a sign of prosperity. It was a visible manifestation of chronic illness. Historians still debate the extent to which schistosomiasis contributed to the overall debility and shortened lifespans of the ancient Egyptians. Did it significantly impact their productivity, particularly among the laboring classes? Was there any understanding of its transmission, or was it simply accepted as an unfortunate, inevitable part of life? The high prevalence suggests that effective prevention or treatment remained elusive for centuries. You're a child, playing happily by the Nile, splashing water on your friends. Your skin is soft and permeable, an easy gateway for the microscopic larvae. Childhood infections would often lead to chronic conditions in adulthood, stunting growth and weakening the body's ability to fight off other illnesses. This early exposure meant that many Egyptians lived with the burden of parasitic infections for their entire lives, a constant silent battle within their own bodies. Beyond schistosomiasis, other intestinal parasites were also rampant. Think about tapeworms and roundworms. These parasites are typically transmitted through contaminated food or water, or poor hygiene. You might be eating meat that hasn't been thoroughly cooked, or handling food with unwashed hands, unknowingly ingesting the microscopic eggs or larvae. Once inside, these worms would grow, competing with you for nutrients, leading to chronic malnutrition, abdominal pain, and general weakness. Imagine the discomfort, the gnawing hunger that never quite goes away, even after you've eaten. The lack of effective waste disposal systems in ancient Egypt further exacerbated the problem. Human and animal waste often ended up near water sources or in areas where food was prepared. Flies, as we mentioned before, would act as vectors, carrying disease from feces to food. You're trying to keep your home clean, but the larger environment is a constant source of contamination. This continuous cycle of reinfection meant that even if you somehow managed to rid yourself of parasites, you were always at risk of picking them up again. Another type of parasite, less related to water but still prevalent, was the flea and louse. You're sleeping on a reed mat, sharing your home with animals, and living in close proximity to other people. These tiny insects would cause incessant itching, skin irritation, and could also transmit diseases like typhus, though the evidence for widespread outbreaks of typhus in ancient Egypt is less clear. Imagine the constant irritation, the inability to get a good night's sleep due to relentless itching, the visible sores on your skin from scratching. These were minor discomforts, perhaps, but they added to the overall burden of living in an environment teeming with life, both visible and invisible. The impact of these silent scourges wasn't just physical, it was also economic. A workforce debilitated by chronic parasitic infections would be less productive, less able to engage in demanding agricultural or construction work. You'd see communities struggling with widespread fatigue, making the colossal tasks of building temples and maintaining irrigation systems even more arduous. The invisible burden of disease shaped the very capabilities of the ancient Egyptian state. Consider the remedies and beliefs surrounding these illnesses. The ancient Egyptians, while possessing impressive medical knowledge for their time, often attributed illness to malevolent spirits or divine displeasure. You might consult a priest-physician, who would offer a combination of herbal remedies, incantations, and amulets. Imagine undergoing treatments that might involve foul-smelling concoctions, strange rituals, or even surgical procedures, all while the tiny worms continued their silent work within your body, largely unaffected by the external interventions. The mummified remains, studied by modern paleopathologists, have provided invaluable insights into the prevalence of these parasitic diseases. Through microscopic examination of tissues, scientists can identify parasite eggs and other indicators, painting a grim picture of the widespread nature of these hidden enemies. You can almost hear the soft hum of the microscope, revealing the unseen horror that lurked within the ancient bodies. So, as you drift off, imagine the quiet, persistent battle being waged within the bodies of the ancient Egyptians. The grand monuments and the vibrant culture stand as testaments to their resilience. But beneath the surface, a silent war was constantly being fought against these relentless, horrifying parasites. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? You felt the unsettling reality of parasitic invasions, invisible enemies lurking in the water and soil of ancient Egypt. But the human body, particularly its most enduring parts, holds even more secrets about the pervasive illnesses of the time. Now, we turn our attention to the silent narratives etched in bone bones, telltales, skeletal sicknesses. By examining the very framework of their bodies, modern science can reveal the debilitating conditions that caused pain, deformity, and often premature death for the ancient Egyptians. Imagine yourself as an ancient Egyptian, going about your daily life. Perhaps you're a laborer, lifting heavy stones for a temple, or a potter, hunched over your wheel for hours. Your body is constantly working, enduring strain and stress, but silently, within your bones and joints. Degenerative changes are taking hold, causing stiffness, chronic pain, and a gradual loss of mobility. You attribute these aches to old age or hard work, not realizing that your very skeleton is telling a story of chronic affliction. A common historical truth is that arthritis was incredibly widespread in ancient Egypt. The rigorous physical demands of their lives, coupled with poor nutrition and repetitive motions, meant that degenerative joint disease was almost universal in adults, regardless of their social status. You'd see it in the wear and tear on vertebrae from carrying heavy loads, or in the stiffness of finger joints from intricate craftwork. Even the wealthy, though perhaps less prone to manual labor, still suffered from forms of arthritis, likely due to diet or genetic predispositions. Consider the prevalence of osteoarthritis, the wear and tear arthritis. A lesser-known detail is that while we often associate this with old age, evidence from Egyptian mummies and skeletons shows significant osteoarthritis in relatively young individuals. Imagine being in your 30s or 40s, feeling the constant ache in your knees, hips, or spine, your movements becoming stiff and painful. Getting up in the morning would be a slow, agonizing process. This wasn't just discomfort. It could be crippling, making it difficult to perform essential daily tasks like farming, walking long distances, or even dressing yourself. You might see an older person with severely bowed legs or a hunched back, a testament to decades of joint degradation. Historians still debate the specific interplay of genetic factors, dietary habits, and physical labor in contributing to the severity and early onset of osteoarthritis in ancient Egypt. Was there a particular nutrient deficiency that exacerbated joint inflammation? Did the constant squatting and kneeling positions adopted for work and daily life put undue stress on certain joints? The exact weighting of these factors remains a subject of ongoing research and discussion among paleopathologists. You're a craftsman, meticulously carving hieroglyphs onto a tomb wall. Your hands, while skilled, are constantly engaged in repetitive, fine motor movements. Over time, The small joints in your fingers and wrists begin to ache, then swell, then deform. This wouldn't be sudden. It would be a gradual, insidious process, slowly eroding your ability to perform your livelihood. The pain would be a constant companion, dulling your focus and making every precise cut a test of endurance. Beyond common osteoarthritis, other skeletal conditions were also present. Evidence of tuberculosis has been found in ancient Egyptian bones, particularly affecting the spine, a condition known as Pott's disease. You'd see individuals with severely hunched backs or collapsed vertebrae, the result of the tuberculosis bacteria eating away at their spinal column. This wasn't just a physical deformity, it could lead to neurological damage, paralysis, and excruciating chronic pain. Imagine living with such a profound and debilitating spinal deformity, every movement a source of agony, your body slowly failing you. Another horrifying, though less common, skeletal affliction was leprosy, while often associated with later historical periods. Cases of leprosy have been identified in ancient Egyptian skeletal remains. This disease, caused by the bacterium Mycobacterium leprae, slowly erodes bone, particularly in the hands and feet, leading to characteristic deformities. Imagine seeing the gradual disfigurement of limbs, the loss of fingers or toes, the chilling realization that your body is literally falling apart. The social stigma associated with such conditions would have added immense psychological suffering to the physical pain. You'd witness individuals cast out from their communities, forced to live in isolation, a living testament to the terrifying power of disease. The study of mummified remains and skeletons provides unique insights into these conditions. Modern imaging techniques, like X-rays and CT scans, allow scientists to peer inside these ancient bodies without disturbing them, revealing bone fractures, signs of infection, and degenerative changes. You can almost hear the hum of the scanning machine, illuminating the hidden suffering of people who lived thousands of years ago. These silent witnesses tell stories that written records often omit, offering a more visceral understanding of daily life. Even children were not spared from skeletal diseases. Evidence of rickets, caused by severe vitamin D deficiency, has been observed in the bones of ancient Egyptian children. While Egypt has abundant sunlight, factors like swaddling infants, keeping them mostly indoors, or poor maternal nutrition could contribute to this condition. You'd see children with bowed legs, deformed limbs, and stunted growth, their bones unable to properly calcify. Imagine the struggles of such a child, unable to run or play like their peers, living with permanent skeletal deformities. The concept of trauma also plays a significant role in skeletal health. Life in ancient Egypt was physically demanding, and accidents were common. Fractures, dislocations, and crush injuries are frequently found in skeletal remains. While some injuries healed relatively well, many showed signs of poor setting, leading to chronic pain and disability. You might suffer a broken leg in the fields, and without proper medical intervention, it could heal crooked, leaving you with a permanent limp and ongoing discomfort, impacting your ability to work and move freely. The skeletal records also hint at cases of tumors and cancers, though less frequently than degenerative diseases. While not always identifiable from bone alone, certain types of cancers can leave traces on the skeletal structure, indicating their presence in antiquity. These discoveries serve as a chilling reminder that even thousands of years ago, humanity faced the same terrifying diseases, sometimes with no hope of understanding, let alone cure. So, as you drift into sleep, consider the silent testament of the bones. They don't scream or cry, but they speak volumes about the chronic pain, the disabilities, and the physical hardships endured by the ancient Egyptians. Their skeletons, enduring beyond their flesh, reveal a harsh reality of everyday suffering, a constant companion that walked with them from birth to burial. You've heard the silent stories etched in the bones of ancient Egyptians, speaking of enduring pain and physical burden. But now, let's turn to a part of the body that, surprisingly, reveals some of the most universal and horrifying suffering: their mouths. Get ready to discover the dental horrors of the pharaohs and everyone else. As we delve into the shockingly widespread and severe dental problems that afflicted all social classes, from the lowliest farmer to the most powerful ruler, imagine yourself as an ancient Egyptian, living your daily life. You're enjoying a meal of coarse bread and perhaps some fish or vegetables, but with every bite, you're unknowingly contributing to a slow, relentless destruction within your mouth. The very food that sustains you is also silently grinding down your teeth, opening the door to pain, infection, and a host of terrifying complications. You might feel a dull ache in your jaw, a sharp pain when you chew, or a persistent throbbing that keeps you awake at night. A common historical truth is that ancient Egyptians suffered from extremely poor dental health, far worse than many other ancient civilizations. This wasn't due to a lack of hygiene, but primarily due to their diet. Their staple food, bread, was made from grain that was ground using stone querns. These grinding stones, whether sandstone or granite, inevitably shed tiny, abrasive particles into the flour. So, every loaf of bread you ate, every flatbread you tore apart, was effectively a mouthful of fine sand and grit. Consider the process you're biting into your daily bread, and with each chew, these tiny, hard particles act like sandpaper, slowly but surely wearing down the enamel of your teeth. A lesser-known detail is that this constant abrasion, known as dental attrition, was so severe that in many mummified remains, the crowns of teeth are completely worn away, exposing the softer dentin beneath, and sometimes even the pulp chamber. Imagine looking in a crude mirror and seeing your teeth worn flat, or even concave, like tiny, eroded mountains. Historians still debate whether the ancient Egyptians had any conscious awareness of the link between their bread-making methods and their severe dental problems. Did they simply accept toothache as an inevitable part of life? Or did they understand the gritty truth about their diet, while they had some remedies for tooth pain? There's little evidence they grasped the root cause of the widespread attrition. You, experiencing this, would find chewing increasingly difficult and painful. As the enamel wears away, your teeth become hypersensitive to hot, cold, and sweet foods. Eating, a fundamental pleasure and necessity, would become a source of dread. You'd find yourself favoring certain sides of your mouth, or avoiding hard foods altogether, leading to nutritional deficiencies and further discomfort. But the horror doesn't stop at worn-down teeth. Once the protective enamel was breached, the inner, softer parts of the tooth became vulnerable to bacteria. This led to widespread dental abscesses. Imagine a severe, throbbing pain emanating from your jaw, accompanied by swelling, fever, and a foul taste in your mouth. This isn't just a cavity, this is a raging infection, a pocket of pus forming at the root of your tooth or in your jawbone. These abscesses were incredibly painful and, without antibiotics, could easily spread, leading to facial swelling, bone destruction, and even life-threatening systemic infections like sepsis. You'd see people with swollen cheeks, their faces distorted by infection, unable to eat or speak properly. The mummified remains provide chilling evidence of these abscesses. X-rays and CT scans often show large, dark areas in the jawbone, indicating where these painful infections ate away at the bone. You can almost feel the phantom pain. Looking at the skeletal evidence of such intense suffering, sometimes, the infection would spread to the sinuses or even to the brain, leading to a truly horrifying death. Beyond attrition and abscesses, periodontal disease, or gum disease, was also rampant. The constant presence of food particles, coupled with the abrasive nature of their diet, led to chronic inflammation of the gums and the supporting bone structure around the teeth. You'd notice your gums bleeding when you ate, your teeth becoming loose, and a persistent bad breath. This wasn't just unpleasant, it could lead to the premature loss of teeth, making chewing even more difficult and affecting your ability to speak clearly. Even the pharaohs, despite their opulent lifestyles, were not immune to these dental horrors. Studies of royal mummies, including Ramesses II, have revealed severe dental attrition, multiple abscesses, and signs of chronic gum disease. Imagine the most powerful man in Egypt, adorned in gold and jewels, suffering from excruciating toothaches and festering infections. His diet, while perhaps more varied than a commoner's, still included bread, making him just as susceptible to the same abrasive wear. One account suggests Ramesses II had a massive abscess that may have contributed to his death. The ancient Egyptians did attempt some dental interventions, though rudimentary by modern standards. You might visit a dentist, though the role was often combined with other medical practices, who might try to drain an abscess or pull a particularly painful tooth. Imagine the agony of a tooth extraction without anesthesia, perhaps with only a strong grip and a pair of primitive pliers. The procedure itself would have been a terrifying ordeal, potentially leading to further infection. The loss of teeth, particularly early in life, had significant consequences. Without teeth, chewing became almost impossible, forcing people to consume softer foods, often gruel. This could lead to further nutritional deficiencies, weakening the body and making it more susceptible to other diseases. You'd see older individuals with very few teeth left, their faces sunken, struggling to consume enough food to maintain their strength. The widespread nature of these dental problems meant that chronic pain was a near-universal experience in ancient Egypt. It wasn't just an occasional inconvenience, it was a constant, gnawing presence that affected every aspect of daily life, from eating to sleeping to simply existing. It's a quiet horror, far from the dramatic tales of plagues or battles, but one that touched every single person in this ancient civilization. And as you drift off, perhaps you can take a moment to appreciate the wonders of modern dentistry and the smooth, grit-free bread you might enjoy tomorrow morning. You've winced at the dental horrors and felt the pervasive internal threat of parasites. Now, let's turn our attention to what you could actually see on the surface of your skin. In ancient Egypt, your skin was a constant battleground, exposed to the harsh sun, irritating insects, and ubiquitous dust. We'll explore the skin, deep afflictions, and remedies, revealing the common skin conditions that plagued the Egyptians and their surprisingly varied attempts to soothe and heal them. Imagine yourself going about your day under the relentless Egyptian sun. The dry air, the intense heat, and the ever-present sand are constantly assaulting your largest organ. You might feel your skin cracking from dryness, itch from insect bites, or sting from sunburn. These weren't just minor irritations. In a time before modern hygiene and effective medications, even small skin issues could become chronic, debilitating problems, opening the door to secondary infections. A common historical truth is that skin infections were incredibly prevalent in ancient Egypt. The warm, often humid climate of the Nile Valley, coupled with poor sanitation and close living conditions, created ideal breeding grounds for bacteria and fungi. You'd see common afflictions like boils, impetigo, and fungal infections, particularly in areas like the feet and skin folds. Imagine a persistent, itchy rash spreading across your skin, or a painful boil festering for days, making even simple movements uncomfortable. Consider the pervasive problem of insect bites. Mosquitoes, flies, and fleas were abundant. Not just annoying, but carriers of disease. A lesser-known detail is that repeated scratching of insect bites, especially with unclean hands, often led to secondary bacterial infections. You might have a simple mosquito bite, but within days, it could become a weeping sore, inflamed and painful. These open wounds served as easy entry points for more serious pathogens. Imagine the constant irritation, the inability to find relief, and the potential for a seemingly minor bite to escalate into a significant health concern. Historians still debate the specific types of skin diseases that were most common, as direct evidence from mummified skin can be challenging to interpret without clear lesions or skeletal markers. Was it primarily bacterial infections, fungal infections, or parasitic skin conditions? The lack of precise diagnostic terms in ancient medical texts further complicates this, leaving room for ongoing research and analysis. You be experiencing such an affliction would turn to the ancient Egyptian physicians, who, despite their limitations, had a surprisingly extensive pharmacopoeia of natural remedies. They understood the importance of topical applications. You might be prescribed ointments made from honey, a natural antiseptic, plant extracts like frankincense or myrrh, or even mineral compounds like natron. Imagine the sticky, sweet relief of honey applied to an irritated rash, or the soothing balm derived from fragrant resins. While these might not cure the underlying cause, they could offer temporary comfort and help prevent further infection. The harsh desert environment also led to significant sun-related skin damage. You're working outdoors for most of your life, with no real protection from the sun's intense UV rays. This constant exposure would lead to premature skin aging, severe sunburns, and likely an increased risk of skin cancers. Although diagnosing specific cancers from ancient remains is difficult, imagine your skin, leathery and prematurely wrinkled, peeling after a particularly long day in the sun. The pain a constant reminder of the desert's power. Even cosmetic practices had health implications. Kohl, the dark eyeliner used by both men and women, while aesthetically pleasing and believed to ward off evil, was often made from lead-based compounds. While some modern research suggests it might have had antibacterial properties in small doses, prolonged use or high concentrations could lead to lead poisoning, affecting more than just the skin. You'd apply it daily, enhancing your eyes, perhaps unaware of the subtle, cumulative toxic effects. The ancient Egyptians also faced skin manifestations of systemic diseases. For instance, some chronic parasitic infections or nutritional deficiencies could lead to skin discoloration, lesions, or unusual textures. You might notice your skin looking jaundiced, indicating liver problems, or developing strange spots, signaling an internal struggle. The skin, being the outermost layer, often provided the first visible clues to deeper health issues. Consider the treatment methods for these skin conditions. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest and most comprehensive medical texts, details numerous remedies for skin ailments. You'd find prescriptions for poultices made from herbs, animal fats, and even dung, though the effectiveness and safety of the latter are highly questionable by modern standards. Imagine the pungent smell of some of these ancient remedies, or the strange textures applied to your irritated skin. The approach was often trial and error, a mix of genuine empirical observation and magical belief. The social implications of severe skin conditions were also significant. Disfiguring lesions, chronic rashes, or widespread sores could lead to social stigma and isolation. You might find yourself ostracized, believed to be cursed by the gods, even if your condition was purely physical. This added a layer of psychological suffering to the physical pain, further impacting your quality of life. Ultimately, the skin, your protective barrier, was often breached by the relentless assaults of the ancient Egyptian environment. The constant battle against insects, infections, and the harsh sun meant that suffering from some form of skin affliction was a near universal experience. Their attempts at remedy, while rudimentary, showcase a practical approach to healing combined with their understanding of the natural world. And as you drift off, perhaps you can appreciate the soothing lotions and antibacterial soaps of your own era, a luxury the ancient Egyptians could only dream of. You've felt the sun's relentless assault on the skin and grappled with the invisible parasites within. Now, let's cast our gaze upwards, to the very windows of the soul. For ancient Egyptians faced a constant struggle with Eye of Horus vision in peril. The desert environment, coupled with pervasive infections and nutritional deficiencies, meant that debilitating eye diseases and blindness were alarmingly common, posing unique challenges in a society reliant on visual cues. Imagine yourself waking up with irritated, gritty eyes, feeling as though sand has been rubbed into them. You might experience persistent redness, a sensitivity to light, or a gradual blurring of your vision. In a land of intense sunlight and fine dust, where so much of daily life involved intricate craftsmanship, reading hieroglyphs, or navigating the open fields, compromised vision wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a profound disability, impacting your ability to work, travel, and even recognize loved ones. A common historical truth is that trachoma was endemic in ancient Egypt, This highly contagious bacterial infection, caused by Chlamydia trachomatis, leads to inflammation of the conjunctiva, the lining of the eyelids and eyeball. It spreads easily through direct contact, shared towels, or even flies landing on an infected eye and then on another person's. You'd see it everywhere, families passing it back and forth. Children suffering from repeated infections. Consider the progression of trachoma. A lesser-known detail is that repeated infections cause the inner surface of the eyelids to become rough and scarred, turning inward so that the eyelashes scrape against the cornea, the clear front part of the eye. This agonizing condition, known as trichiasis, slowly but relentlessly abraded the eye's surface, leading to scarring, corneal opacity, and eventually, irreversible blindness. Imagine the constant pain, like tiny needles scratching your eyeball with every blink, gradually dimming your world until it becomes a permanent darkness. You might wake up each morning, hoping for a clearer view, only to find the fog in your eyes growing thicker. Historians still debate the exact social and economic impact of widespread blindness from trachoma on ancient Egyptian society. How did a significant portion of the population coping with vision impairment affect their labor force, their ability to conduct trade, or even their military capabilities? Did communities develop specific support systems for the blind, or were they largely left to fend for themselves? The answers remain complex and often inferred from limited evidence. You, experiencing trachoma, would witness your vision slowly fading. Initially, it might be a blur, then patches of darkness, until eventually, the world disappears into a gray haze. The vibrant colors of the Nile, the intricate carvings on temple walls, the faces of your family, all would become indistinct blurs. Then nothing. This gradual loss of sight would be terrifying, stripping you of your independence and forcing you to rely on others for basic survival. Beyond trachoma, other infectious eye diseases were common. Exacerbated by the dusty environment and poor hygiene, conjunctivitis, or pink eye, was likely widespread, causing irritation, discharge, and discomfort. You'd see people with red, watery eyes, their eyelids swollen, trying to rub away the irritation, while often not leading to blindness on its own. It contributed to overall eye health degradation and made individuals more susceptible to more serious infections. The intense sunlight and the prevalence of sand and dust also contributed to a high incidence of cataracts. Over time, the lens of the eye would become cloudy, leading to progressive vision loss. While modern surgery can easily correct cataracts, in ancient Egypt, it meant a gradual journey into blindness. Imagine seeing the world through an ever-thickening veil, the colors fading, the details disappearing, until only vague shapes remain. Nutritional deficiencies also played a role. Vitamin A deficiency, for instance, could lead to night blindness and, in severe cases, to irreversible corneal damage and total blindness. You might find yourself unable to navigate after dusk, bumping into objects, and feeling a deep fear of the night. This dietary link adds another layer of complexity to the challenges of maintaining vision in ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptians did try to treat eye conditions, and their knowledge of ophthalmology, for its time, was quite advanced. The Ebers Papyrus contains numerous recipes for eye salves and washes, often incorporating ingredients like honey, lead ores like galena, used in coal, malachite, and various plant extracts. You might have a soothing concoction dropped into your irritated eyes, the cool liquid offering temporary relief. Even if the underlying infection persisted, they used coal, not just for aesthetic purposes, but also believing it protected the eyes from the glare of the sun and warded off evil spirits. And some ingredients might have had mild antibacterial properties. However, many of their treatments were ineffective or even harmful. The use of lead compounds, while possibly offering some antibacterial effect, could also be toxic in the long run. The lack of sterile instruments and understanding of germ theory meant that even well-intentioned interventions could introduce further infection. Imagine a local healer applying a strange poultice to your eye, hoping for a cure but risking further damage. The social and economic impact of widespread eye disease was immense. A significant portion of the population might have suffered from some degree of visual impairment, affecting their ability to work, especially in skilled trades like jewelry making, sculpting, or even basic farming, which required clear vision for irrigation and harvest. You'd see the blind relying on family members or becoming beggars, their lives profoundly limited by their inability to see. The Eye of Horus amulet, a powerful symbol of protection and healing, specifically for the eye, underscores the pervasive fear and reality of eye disease in ancient Egypt. It was worn to ward off illness and injury, particularly to the eyes, a testament to how central vision was to their daily lives and how vulnerable they felt it to be. So, as you ease into slumber, consider the profound darkness that descended upon so many ancient Egyptians, not from the night sky, but from within their own bodies. The struggles against microscopic invaders, the relentless desert environment, and the limitations of ancient medicine meant that for many, the world slowly, agonizingly, faded to black. May your own vision be clear and unburdened as you rest tonight. You've felt the pain of dental attrition, experienced the itch of skin afflictions, and seen the world through the clouded eyes of ancient Egyptians. Now, let's consider a more subtle, yet equally pervasive threat that silently attacked their very breath, the curse of the pharaoh's respiratory woes. This refers to the chronic lung conditions often found in mummies, a testament to the environmental factors and daily exposures that made breathing a persistent challenge in ancient Egypt. Imagine yourself standing near a bustling construction site, perhaps a new temple being erected. The air is thick with dust from limestone carving, the grit of sand blowing in from the desert, and the smoke from nearby cooking fires. You're inhaling these particles with every breath, day in and day out. Or perhaps you're a woman in your small, enclosed mud brick home, the smoke from the cooking hearth filling the air, clinging to your clothes and burning your lungs. This constant assault on your respiratory system wasn't dramatic, like a sudden plague, but a slow, insidious erosion of lung capacity, leading to persistent coughs, shortness of breath, and a gradual decline in health. A common historical truth is that respiratory diseases were a leading cause of morbidity and mortality in ancient Egypt. The very elements that defined their environment, the desert, the Nile, and their architectural achievements, also contributed significantly to lung problems. It was an unavoidable part of daily life, affecting everyone from the laborers to the priests. Consider the pervasive presence of dust and sand. A lesser-known detail is that not only did fine sand blow in from the desert, but the quarrying, carving, and construction of massive stone monuments generated enormous amounts of stone dust, particularly silica. You'd be a worker in a stone quarry, chiseling away at limestone, or a sculptor meticulously refining a statue. And with every strike, tiny particles would become airborne. These microscopic shards, when inhaled, would embed themselves in your lung tissue, leading to a condition known as silicosis. Imagine a persistent dry cough that never goes away, a tightness in your chest, and a growing difficulty in breathing, especially after exertion. This slow scarring of the lungs would gradually suffocate you, making every breath a painful effort. Historians still debate the specific health impacts of different types of dust exposure. Was the silica dust from quarrying more damaging than the general desert dust? Did the use of certain types of stone, like sandstone, produce more harmful particles? The long-term effects of chronic, low-level exposure are hard to quantify precisely, but the evidence from mummies points to widespread lung damage. You're a woman, spending much of your time indoors, preparing meals over an open fire. The smoke from burning wood, charcoal, or even animal dung fills the air within your confined home. This constant exposure to indoor air pollution would damage your bronchial tubes and lung tissue over years. You'd likely suffer from chronic bronchitis, characterized by a persistent, phlegmy cough, especially in the mornings. Imagine the wheezing, the struggle to draw a full breath, the recurring chest infections that would leave you weak and vulnerable. This quiet suffering was a domestic horror, particularly for those who spent most of their lives within the smoky confines of their homes. Evidence from mummified remains, analyzed through paleopathology, often shows signs of these chronic respiratory conditions, such as anthracosis or black lung, which is the accumulation of carbon particles in the lungs. You can almost see the darkened lung tissue, a grim testament to millennia of smoke and dust inhalation. This widespread condition confirms that Egyptians from all walks of life, not just those in specific trades, were affected by the air they breathed. Beyond chronic conditions, acute respiratory infections were also common and often fatal. Colds, flu-like illnesses, and bacterial pneumonia would spread rapidly in densely populated areas with limited hygiene. You might catch a simple cold, but without antibiotics, it could quickly descend into a severe chest infection, overwhelming your weakened lungs. Imagine the fever, the rattling cough, the struggle for breath. As your body fights a losing battle against an infection that would be easily treatable today. Children and the elderly, whose immune systems were weaker, would be particularly vulnerable to these acute infections. The Nile, while providing life, also contributed to respiratory problems. The annual inundation and the marshy areas created ideal breeding grounds for mosquitoes, which, while primarily known for spreading malaria, also introduced other pathogens and caused general discomfort that could exacerbate respiratory issues through disturbed sleep and chronic itching. Even certain traditional Egyptian practices might have inadvertently contributed to respiratory problems. The use of incense in temples and homes, while culturally significant, would have added to the particulate matter in the air, potentially irritating sensitive lungs, especially during prolonged ceremonies. You'd breathe in the fragrant smoke, believing it cleansed the air or pleased the gods, perhaps unaware of its subtle irritation to your airways. The curse of the pharaohs, a popular notion often associated with archaeological excavations, typically refers to a swift and mysterious illness. While fanciful, it ironically points to the very real and pervasive respiratory dangers that ancient Egyptians, and indeed anyone disturbing ancient tombs with their accumulated dust, faced. The lingering dust of millennia, laden with fungal spores or fine particles, could indeed provoke a severe respiratory reaction in unprepared modern explorers, a morbid callback to the challenges of ancient life. So, as you drift into sleep, consider the silent struggle for breath that so many ancient Egyptians endured. The air they breathed, while sustaining them, also contained unseen threats that slowly, relentlessly, damaged their lungs. The pervasive dust, the smoke from their fires, and the constant threat of infection made every breath a small victory against the elements. May your own breathing be easy and untroubled as you rest tonight. You've heard the ancient Egyptians struggle with chronic lung issues and felt the constant irritation of dust and smoke. But now, let's turn to the most heartbreaking aspect of disease in antiquity: childhood's frailty, early life diseases. This explores the devastatingly high rates of infant and child mortality in ancient Egypt, a grim reality due to common infections, nutritional deficiencies, and an environment teeming with unseen dangers. For every grand monument, countless tiny lives were cut tragically short. Imagine yourself as a parent in ancient Egypt, holding your newborn child. The joy is immense, but it is deeply tinged with fear. You know that roughly half of all children born will not live to see their 5th birthday. The air, the water, the food, all carry unseen threats. You'd watch your child with constant vigilance, praying to the gods for protection, knowing that a simple cough, a fever, or an upset stomach could swiftly escalate into a fatal illness. Every cry, every restless night, would fill you with a profound sense of dread. A common historical truth is that infectious diseases were the primary killers of infants and young children in ancient societies. Their undeveloped immune systems were simply no match for the onslaught of bacteria, viruses, and parasites that thrived in environments with poor sanitation and limited medical knowledge. You'd see epidemics sweep through villages, claiming the youngest and most vulnerable first, leaving behind a trail of grief and despair. Consider the pervasive threat of diarrheal diseases. A lesser-known detail is that these were likely the single biggest killer of infants and toddlers. Contaminated water, unhygienic food preparation, and inadequate waste disposal meant that children were constantly exposed to pathogens like E. coli or salmonella. Imagine your child, suffering from severe dehydration, their tiny bodies wasting away rapidly as they lose vital fluids. Without access to oral rehydration solutions or clean water, death could come within hours or days. You would feel helpless, trying traditional remedies, watching your child slip away, knowing there was little you could do. Historians still debate the specific impact of various infectious agents on child mortality rates. Was it primarily bacterial infections? Or were viral diseases like measles or smallpox, if present, equally devastating? The lack of specific diagnostic tools in ancient texts makes it challenging to pinpoint exact causes. But the overall picture of widespread childhood deaths is undeniable from archaeological and skeletal evidence. You, as a young child, would be constantly exposed. You play in the dirt, put objects in your mouth, and interact closely with other children, easily picking up and spreading infections. A simple cold might become pneumonia. A minor cut could fester into a life-threatening infection. Your world, while seemingly innocent, was a minefield of microscopic dangers. You'd witness your playmates, your siblings, suddenly taken ill, their laughter replaced by gasps, their energy by a chilling stillness. Beyond infections, nutritional deficiencies also played a significant role in childhood frailty. While the Nile provided abundant food, malnourishment, particularly protein and vitamin deficiencies, was still common, especially among the poorer classes or during times of famine. A diet heavily reliant on bread, lacking in diverse nutrients, could lead to weakened immune systems, making children even more susceptible to illness. You'd see children with distended bellies a sign of severe protein deficiency or parasitic load, stunted growth, and dull, lifeless eyes, their bodies struggling to thrive. Evidence of rickets, caused by vitamin D deficiency, is frequently found in child skeletons. As we mentioned before, imagine a child with bowed legs, a misshapen skull, or a pigeon chest, their bones failing to develop properly. This painful and disfiguring condition would impact their mobility and overall quality of life, making them more vulnerable to injury and disease. Even in sunny Egypt, if children were kept indoors, or if mothers were malnourished, they could suffer from this crippling condition. The practice of weaning was a particularly perilous time for infants. Once they transitioned from breast milk to solid foods, often gruels made from gritty grain, they lost the protective antibodies from their mother's milk and were exposed to new pathogens in their food and water. You'd see a spike in mortality around the weaning age, a period of extreme vulnerability as their tiny bodies adjusted to a new diet and a world teeming with germs. The emotional toll on parents must have been immense. To love a child in ancient Egypt was to live with constant anxiety and the almost certain heartbreak of loss. Funerary customs often reflect this profound grief, with elaborate rituals and offerings for deceased children, a desperate attempt to ensure their passage to the afterlife and perhaps to soothe the unbearable pain of their parents. You would cling to your children, cherish every moment, knowing that their fragile existence could be extinguished at any time. Archaeological discoveries of child burials often reveal the harsh reality of these high mortality rates. Cemeteries are often filled with the graves of infants and young children, a stark reminder of how few made it to adulthood. Examining their tiny bones can reveal signs of anemia, infections, and developmental issues, painting a tragic picture of their brief, often painful, lives. So, as you drift off to sleep, consider the fragility of life in ancient Egypt, particularly for its youngest inhabitants. The laughter of children, while cherished, often faded into the silence of early death. A grim testament to the overwhelming challenges of survival against unseen enemies and the limits of ancient medicine. May the children of your own world be safe and healthy as you rest tonight. You've heard the heartbreaking tales of childhood's frailty and seen the silent suffering etched into ancient bones. Now, Let's explore how the ancient Egyptians fought back against these relentless diseases. A fascinating blend of practical observation and deep-seated belief medicine and magic, ancient Egyptian cures. Their approach to healing was holistic, incorporating herbal remedies, surgical procedures, and powerful incantations, all aimed at restoring balance and appeasing the divine. Imagine yourself as an ancient Egyptian, struck down by a debilitating illness. You're suffering from a persistent cough, a raging fever, or agonizing stomach pain. You're not just worried about your physical symptoms. You're also concerned about the spiritual implications. Is this a punishment from a god? The work of an evil spirit? Or simply a natural imbalance? Your healer, often a priest-physician, would approach your condition from multiple angles, seeking to address both the physical and the supernatural aspects of your affliction. A common historical truth is that ancient Egyptian medicine was remarkably advanced for its time, particularly in areas like surgery, dentistry, despite the prevalence of tooth decay, and pharmacology. They possessed a vast empirical knowledge of anatomy gained in part from mummification practices and developed a wide array of effective herbal remedies. You'd find detailed medical papyri, like the Ebers Papyrus or the Edwin Smith Papyrus, outlining diagnostic procedures, prognoses, and treatments for hundreds of different ailments. Consider the pragmatic side of their medicine. A lesser-known detail is that ancient Egyptian physicians performed surprisingly sophisticated surgical procedures. They could set broken bones, often quite skillfully, using splints and bandages, and even performed trepanation, drilling a hole in the skull for certain head injuries. Though the success rate of such extreme measures remains a subject of academic debate, imagine suffering a severe fracture, and a physician, with surprisingly steady hands, manipulating your bone back into place, securing it with strips of linen stiffened with resin. The pain would be immense, but the precision, for their era, was remarkable. Historians still debate the extent to which the empirical, observational aspects of Egyptian medicine were truly separated from the magical and religious elements. Did the physicians themselves distinguish between the two, or was it all part of a seamless healing process? Was the magic merely a psychological comfort, or did they truly believe in its power to influence physical outcomes? This fascinating interplay between science and spirituality continues to intrigue scholars of ancient medical practices. You, as a patient, might be given a potion concocted from various plant extracts. The Egyptians had a deep understanding of the medicinal properties of herbs like willow containing salicylic acid, a precursor to aspirin, used for pain relief, poppy for opium, a powerful sedative, and castor oil a laxative. Imagine drinking a bitter concoction, hoping it would soothe your pain or expel the malevolent spirit believed to be causing your illness. The taste might be awful, but the potential for relief would make it bearable. But alongside the practical, there was always the profound influence of magic and religion. Illness was often seen as a disruption of cosmic order, a punishment from the gods, or the result of demonic possession. You would find physicians often doubling as priests, interpreting dreams, performing rituals, and prescribing amulets or incantations. Imagine a priest-physician chanting over you, making gestures to ward off evil, or placing a protective amulet around your neck, hoping to enlist the divine forces in your recovery. The scent of incense would fill the air, meant to purify and heal. The curse of the pharaohs, a modern urban legend often used for dramatic effect in fiction, actually stems from ancient Egyptian beliefs about the potent protective magic surrounding tombs and sacred sites. While we now understand it's more likely environmental pathogens like fungal spores that caused illness in tomb robbers, the ancient Egyptians firmly believed in the power of their spells and curses to deter trespassers and inflict illness upon them. You'd hear stories of those who desecrated tombs falling ill or meeting untimely ends, reinforcing the belief in the protective power of magic. Consider the detailed prescriptions for specific ailments found in the papyri. For instance, for eye infections which, as we discussed, were rampant, they might prescribe mixtures of honey, lead compounds like coal and malachite, ground into a paste and applied to the eye. While the lead might have been toxic in the long run, the honey certainly had antiseptic properties. You'd feel the cool, possibly stinging sensation of the balm as it was applied, hoping it would clear your vision. The role of the patient's faith in the cure was also paramount. If you believed in the power of the physician, the gods, and the magic, your chances of recovery were likely perceived as higher. This psychological component, while not directly curing the disease, could certainly aid in recovery by boosting morale and reducing stress. You'd cling to hope, to the rituals, and to the words of your healer, desperate for relief. The ancient Egyptians also practiced preventative medicine to some extent. You'd see advice on hygiene, like washing, and on diet. While their understanding of germ theory was non-existent, their observations of how disease spread likely led to some practical measures that inadvertently reduced transmission. For example, some theories suggest their elaborate purification rituals for priests had a practical, hygienic benefit. However, despite their innovations, the limitations were stark. Without a germ theory, they couldn't grasp the true nature of contagion. Without antibiotics, bacterial infections were often fatal. Without proper understanding of nutrition, deficiencies were widespread. You'd find them treating symptoms effectively in many cases, but often unable to cure the underlying cause, especially for chronic or systemic diseases. So, as you drift off to sleep, imagine the ancient Egyptian physician, a figure standing at the crossroads of science and spirituality. Their efforts to heal, a captivating blend of practical skill and magical belief, were a testament to humanity's enduring struggle against disease. They faced horrifying afflictions with ingenuity, faith, and a deep understanding of their world, even when that understanding was incomplete. May your own journey into dreams be one of peaceful, undisturbed health. You've explored the fascinating blend of medicine and magic, the ingenious yet limited attempts to combat the array of horrifying diseases in ancient Egypt. Now, as our historical journey through their afflictions draws to a close, let's step back and consider resting in eternity the legacy of disease. We'll reflect on how these pervasive ancient diseases shaped not just the lives and deaths of Egyptians, but also their worldview, their beliefs about the afterlife, and ultimately, how they are remembered through the enduring testament of their mummified forms. Imagine yourself as an ancient Egyptian, living your life knowing that illness and premature death are constant companions. This wasn't a distant threat, it was a deeply personal reality, affecting every family, every village. This pervasive awareness of frailty would profoundly influence your understanding of existence, emphasizing the fleeting nature of earthly life and the paramount importance of securing a healthy eternity. A common historical truth is that the concept of the afterlife was central to ancient Egyptian culture, and this belief was inextricably linked to their experiences with disease and mortality. The elaborate mummification practices, the intricate tomb paintings, and the vast array of funerary rituals were all designed to ensure a successful journey to the field of reeds, a perfect, healthy version of life on Earth. You'd spend significant resources and effort in preparing for death, hoping to escape the physical ailments that plagued your mortal coil. Consider the meticulous process of mummification. A lesser-known detail is that beyond simply preserving the body, the process itself, particularly the removal of organs, provided the ancient Egyptians with an unparalleled, albeit gruesome, understanding of human anatomy. While not explicitly for medical diagnostics, this hands-on experience certainly informed their medical practices. You can almost see the embalmers, their hands expertly navigating the internal organs, gaining a practical knowledge of the body's inner workings that few other ancient cultures possessed. The diseases we discussed, the signs of organ damage or bone deformities, would have been intimately known to those who prepared the dead for eternity. Historians still debate the extent to which the fear of disease, particularly disfiguring or debilitating ones, influenced the evolution of funerary practices and the emphasis on physical preservation. Was the desire for a perfect body in the afterlife a direct response to the imperfections and sufferings of mortal life? Or was it a broader theological concept that simply incorporated these concerns? This nuanced relationship between daily suffering and spiritual aspirations remains a rich area of scholarly inquiry. You, as a living Egyptian, would witness the devastating effects of disease all around you. You'd see children succumbing to fevers, adults debilitated by parasites, and the elderly suffering from chronic pain and blindness. This omnipresent suffering would undoubtedly shape your prayers, your offerings to the gods, and your deep desire for a healthier existence beyond the grave. The illnesses weren't just physical burdens, they were spiritual challenges, tests of faith that you hope to overcome in the afterlife. The very deities of the Egyptian pantheon reflected their concerns about health and healing. You'd pray to gods like Sekhmet, the goddess of healing and plague, or Thoth, the god of wisdom and medicine. Amulets depicting protective symbols, like the Eye of Horus, a powerful symbol for eye health, would be worn universally, a constant plea for divine intervention against the ravages of disease. Imagine clutching a small, smooth amulet in your hand, finding a measure of comfort in its promise of protection. Even as you felt the familiar aches of daily life, the archaeological record, particularly the study of mummified remains and skeletal collections, is the most profound legacy of these ancient diseases. These are the patients of the past, offering direct evidence of the conditions we've discussed. You can almost hear the hushed voices of modern paleopathologists, meticulously examining ancient bones and tissues, using cutting-edge technology to diagnose ailments from millennia ago. This scientific detective work brings the invisible suffering of the past vividly to life, connecting us to the struggles of people who lived thousands of years ago. From the telltale signs of dental attrition on a pharaoh's jaw to the microscopic eggs of schistosomiasis found in the tissues of a common laborer, the mummies have provided an unparalleled window into the health of an entire civilization. You can see the bowed legs of rickets, the fused vertebrae of tuberculosis, and the widespread signs of osteoarthritis, painted with silent brushstrokes on the canvas of time. This legacy of disease reminds us of the universal human experience of illness and the remarkable resilience of people facing unimaginable challenges without modern medicine. It helps us appreciate the fragility of life and the immense progress humanity has made in understanding and combating disease. The horrifying afflictions of ancient Egypt, in their very existence, contribute to a greater understanding of both past and present.